I understand you are an old school biohacker. So I'd imagine you were biohacking before the term biohacking even existed.
Yes, indeed. I'm 76, so I started biohacking around 1970.
Okay. How old were you?
At that point, I was 18 or 19. What happened was I grew up in the South, and in a normal sort of family, although my mom was a nutritionalist, so I did have the background in that, but I didn't really pay any attention to her at first. And as soon as I could, because I was kind of a rebel, I went to San Francisco in 1968 uh, because of the war and the whole politics of the time. And what really started me in biohacking was that I did a really improper fast to protest the war. And I was born with some health issues, but that really kicked them into high gear. So I realized if I was going to survive, I really needed to learn everything I could about nutrition. So
And what is an improper fast? What'd you do?
I did, instead of now we know how to fast, I certainly know a lot about it, but back then no one was talking about any of this stuff. As you say, the biohacking wasn't a word. So an improper fast to me meant, maybe eating one bite of hamburger every 2 or 3 days and then eating nothing and then taking some drugs so I could not be starving to death. And I did that for a very long time. And, I lost most of my body weight, my muscle. Whereas in high school, I had been a jock and I was very, very buff, even though I'm not a big guy. So, if you see pictures of me then, my face was all, it wasn't thin or anything, but I figured out how to fix everything, but it was definitely a journey.
Right. So I guess a hunger strike more than a fast.
Yeah. Although I hardly ate anything really for a whole month. It was a hunger strike fast, interchangeable words, I suppose.
Yeah. So tell me more about coming up, as far as like biohacking and your origin story.
Okay. So, I was at university and so I, jumped into the, library, and back then we didn't have the internet. So I started looking up everything I could about physiology, nutrition, health, anything I could do to kind of start repairing the damage. And so one of the things I started early on was I thought, well, I'll become a vegetarian, which, later on I changed that. But, I started seeing all these herbs that were amazingly medicinal, like Chinese herbals. Like I got really big on ginseng root, which I mean everybody should take ginseng root if they have the money. But back
That's
then,
like a upper, right? It's like a caffeine substitute.
ginseng root.
Yeah.
No, it is a very mild upper, but it's a beneficial upper. It has no negative side effects at all. Ginseng root, has been prized for many thousands of years, and the Chinese, are the main proponents, but it turns out that in North Georgia is an ideal place to grow ginseng root. And it wasn't valued very much because people in America didn't know what it was, but the Chinese actually buy most of the American ginseng root, even though, you pay all this premium money for Chinese ginseng, but a lot of the American is better. So what it does is, it's good for longevity. Basically, it's good for almost everything. I mean, it's in there like with the reishi and certain medicinal mushrooms, things that if you have the budget, you should be taking pretty much every day.
Got it. So yeah, so boosts energy, physical stamina, improve cognitive function, so kind of does everything. And this is something that you're a big proponent on.
Yeah, and that was, one of the first things I discovered. But in those days, hardly anyone knew about ginseng root in America. But further, nobody had ever made a food product with ginseng. I mean, now you see it in, cans at the convenience store. But then, if you wanted ginseng root, you either chewed the root, it's a tough root, or you made tea. And so I decided to start a natural food company. That was my first real business. It was called Love Natural Food and Herb Company. And so we made an energy bar. Actually, I should have brought some out. I could show you, but, that was called a Nazar bar that had 2 grams of red ginseng or 2 grams of white ginseng ground up in it. So that was the first time anyone ever thought, oh, let's put ginseng in a food product. And it also had bee pollen, it had chia seeds, it had things nobody then was doing. And notably, it had no sugar, which all the energy bars at the time were filled with sugar and cheap fillers. So I made good money on that. And that really started me on the way to, examining other things.
Wow. So what'd you stumble upon next?
Maybe the next thing was cold water swimming. Because I was in San Francisco and, the water's 50, 55 degrees. And I was a swimmer in school. I was actually on the team in high school and college. So, I started ocean swimming, but long distances, like to the point where, I would get out and I would be completely shaking because
It must have been red too.
Yeah, I had no body fat at that point because of the fasting. So, I did that. And then I got into breath holding, way before Willem Hoff or Sandy. I don't know if Sandy is another person, breath hold person on the internet, which check out, it's another option there. And then I started going to Herbal Hot Springs, which probably people don't know, but it's hot springs up in Northern California near San Francisco. And I learned from that a lot of things. Like, for one thing, they invented a massage technique called Watsu, where you do massage in the water. So I got into that. But the main thing there is they do these hot coals, because Harbin, being kind of an alternative spa, is not like a nice, get a nice little facial and like that kind of a spa. It's like very hardcore. So the hot tub is so hot that you can tell when someone's never been there before, because they'll start into the hot tub and as soon as it's up to their knees, they'll immediately start back out. And then everybody in the pool's going, no, you can do it. You just have to get in slow. So you get in the hot pool and you can only take it like 3 or 4 minutes, and then you get out and they have a cold plunge right beside it. So you get in there and it's ridiculously cold. So you do these hot coals back and forth, and it shocks your system both ways in an unbelievable way. And even in the winter, it could be raining and, 40 degrees. And after 4 or 5 hot coals, I could sit out on the deck totally naked, because it's a naked spa, and meditate for 20 or 30 minutes without even shivering. And so that was eye-opening, because, I'm not good with long-term with the cold, but between that and the swimming, that was early 70s. I started learning.
And like cold plunging wasn't a thing. Like that also probably didn't have a word associated with it, right?
Cold plunging wasn't a thing. Harbin was way ahead of the curve with all of this stuff. You can Google it. It's still there, but now is kind of more dumbed down, but it's still an amazing place. So
were you like questioning, like, should I be doing this? Like, is this healthy? Or did you just know, like, this feels good, I should do it? Like, how did you know that cold plunging was good for you?
Like many things like this, the first time you do it, you're questioning your sanity. You're thinking, this hurts. It can't be that good. But my friends were doing it, and I did it. And after 2 or 3 times, you go up there, once a week or so, and slowly you start to have a shift. You realize that that it's having an amazing effect. Like, as soon as I realized after a few times that I could sit in the rain naked with, almost frost and meditate for half an hour, I realized, okay, this is real. This is doing something that, I never could have predicted, because under ordinary circumstances, I couldn't have done that in a million years.
Right.
There's this continuum of pain and pleasure. And, of course, we always want to gravitate toward pleasure, but we need a certain amount of pain too. And research shows, because I'm a really big research geek, that if you do something that causes pain but is good for you, it resets a certain thing in your brain such that you, it grows your resilience overall. I wish I had the study, I would recite it to you, but because, I've read thousands of studies. I can't remember every detail of every one, but that particular study caught my attention. And so at that point, I started focusing on what we can do to build this fortitude and all like that. Although there are a few things that do not cause pain, but most everything that's good for you comes with a certain amount of pain. Interestingly, gentle rocking, which I'll get into later, does not cause pain. It's one of the few things you can do that's completely blissful, and yet it has all these benefits, but no pain at all.
What was the word? Gentle rocking?
Gentle rocking, the floating bed, my invention,
Right.
which is based on that principle. But I'm happy to keep talking about my path here because I think I have things to share, and a lot of people who are younger maybe haven't been through the ringer like I have, and I kind of had to because of my health issues. So then I started finding there are these Korean spas around, and also a lot of the Korean spas have hot cold, like San Francisco, and they have a Japanese spa there too that has that. But in LA, there's a spa called the We Spa, and they have a freezing room, which is like below zero, and then there's a hot right beside where you can lie on hot rocks, and another room you lie on hot salt, and another room you lie on hot clay. So, if you get into the whole spa thing, there are a lot of, practices that have been around a long time that just most Americans we don't know about yet.
Yeah. There's a great quote. It's like if you want to discover something new, just read the history books because things just kind of always recirculate. And
Yes.
people think, oh, they're discovering this, contrast therapy, and it's like, oh, like it turns out they've been doing it in China for for years.
I'm a huge fan of that. Exactly. That was part of my program. So, shortly after the Harbin era, San Francisco, I got into Ayurveda and TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. And I've got a really good friend who's an acupuncturist doctor in that. But while I like Chinese medicine and the ginseng root thing brought me into that, it's a bit complicated to learn. And because I'm kind of a polymath and I'm looking at all these things, I don't necessarily always have time to explore everything in detail. But then I discovered Ayurveda. And some of your people may know I became friends with Dr. Ladd. I hosted him. He's possibly the biggest proponent of Ayurveda. Really brought it to America. He's got
So that's Indian Ayurvedic medicine.
Indian Ayurveda, yeah. And
Gotcha.
it's easy. Whereas Chinese, if you've got the time, learn about TCM, Chinese traditional medicine. But if you don't have the time, you can buy one book. It's called Ayurveda, The Science of Self-Healing, that Dr. Ladd wrote. And 3 hours later, you will know twice as much as you did before about healing, because Ayurveda breaks every food, every activity, every mental state, everything into what's called 3 doshas. And those 3 qualities or doshas are air, fire, and then they combine earth and water. So once you find your body phenotype, you can balance yourself out by choosing foods and activities and even mental things, meditation, that like if you're Vata, air, then you can do the heavier things. And his book outlines them, and then he's got more books. But I tell people, start with that one book, 3 hours. It'll change your life.
So like what's one like actionable item that just like a normal person can do from Ayurvedic medicine?
Well, after you read the book, you'll know what your type is, and then you can start picking the food that will balance you out, the activity. There's a joke in Ayurveda. It's like the air people, they have a saying, and the word in Hindu is Vata, but it says, I am a Vata person. I'm worried about being a Vata, because air people tend to worry. That's their, problem. And the fire people, they're very active and they will go do things, but their problem is overheat and too much anger and things. And the word there is pitta. Pitta means pitted. That's where the word pitted came from, pitta, and it means fire. And so the sentence there is, I'm pitta and I'm pissed. And then the third one is kapha, which is earth and water, which are very slow and sluggish, but they do get things done, and they have an innately strong constitution. And so the word there is, I'm kapha. So if you're
So basically, everyone gets broken down into 3 different types.
yes, but you will be a combination of those 3, and so you have your birth constitution where you will be maybe a blend or maybe predominantly one, and a few people are born completely balanced, and those are the people you just like think, oh my God, it's so lucky, you know. But most
Right.
people are born with the predominance, and so you do foods and activities that are opposite of that to bring you into balance.
And you found that this works for you.
Oh, it works unbelievably, really. Like,
So
and I've started to fix my natural constitution because I was born air, fire, and by
okay.
eating kapha food, now I'm much more balanced. And you know, actually, I was with Dr. Ladd, and he's so smart. I mean, really, he's retired now, but I said, Dr. Ladd, you know, I know that Indian food has all these spices, and you've figured it out for thousands of years, but you know, when I eat it, it's too much fire for me. I get fiery, but I know the food is good. What am I doing wrong? And he just laughed and he goes, "Oh, you're a pitta. You shouldn't eat Indian food." And here he's an
Okay, so
Indian physician.
so you're born. So you said you were born air and fire.
Right.
So what type of foods then are you eating?
Oh, well, now I can eat everything because I've restored balance, but that took me quite a few years. But in the restoration process, I tend to eat heavier foods. You know, I started eating more meat, and which, you know, I was vegetarian for a long time. Now I hardly need much meat, but I eat it when my body tells me because I pay attention, you know, which is job one. But, there are certain, legumes you can eat. There's a whole pecking order if you're going to be a vegetarian of which beans and grains are good. And so the Hindus figured a lot of this out, and the Chinese as well. So tofu is somewhat good, but more for women. But the dals, which DAHL, they're particular Indian beans, are really digestible. And then there's the pecking order. And when you get down to the beans that are not good, like soybeans are like the worst, black beans are bad. You know, people right now, there's a whole thing, oh, let's eat Mexican food, black beans. No, not good. Pintos are better than that. There's Azuki beans, which is a famous bean. By the way, in San Francisco, I got a girlfriend who had a very famous vegetarian restaurant called the Good Karma Cafe. Everybody came in. Ram Dass, all the amazing people in San Francisco would go there. And we lived upstairs, so I would, you know, eat the good food and watch them cook it. And so I learned about macrobiotic and Chinese cooking just from hanging around with her for a few years.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was a good time.
So let's continue on this.
So
story.
then I got into yoga because obviously if you're exploring those modalities, you want to learn about exercise. And on that note, I have to say, you know, all the studies say there are 4 things to improve your health and longevity. And they always rise to the top of almost every study. And they might change orders, and occasionally a study will say something different. But these 4 things, 80% of the time, come up. You have to focus on diet and nutrition, which means herbs and things like that. You have to focus on exercise, which includes yoga, and it also can include strength training. You have to focus on better sleep quality and stress relief. And every study almost says the same things. So if you want to take a journey toward better health, you need to look at your life and figure out what you can do in those 4 areas to make your life better and make your health better. And so when I looked at that, after a time, I realized, okay, I've done the diet and nutrition, and I've started with meditation to get rid of stress, but I have not done anything for my sleep. And then I started looking at sleep and studying, okay, I looked at EEG and the brainwave patterns in sleep. And I started to find out that in America, we've gone a really wrong direction because we got into this go, go, go philosophy where I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of a thinking. But the
Hmm.
studies show that that is a huge mistake, that uh, sacrificing an hour of sleep takes more time than that off your life, and it takes more energy and more cognitive ability off the table. So even if you think I shouldn't, I should sleep 6 hours instead of seven, it's a mistake. And nobody should be doing that. And so there is a simple thing you can do to find out, which a lot of people don't think about. But the trick to figuring out your sleep needs is you kind of push your schedule back and you spend a week or two sleeping without an alarm as long as it takes until you wake up naturally and you feel energized. So a lot of people will find, first of all, that they got a heavy sleep deficit, and they might find they're sleeping 10 hours a day for a week or two. But you
Yeah.
have to go through that to get rid of the sleep deficit, and then you'll stabilize. And at that point, you can start, you'll still be waking up when it comes natural, but you'll probably be sleeping less. But you may find that you need 7, maybe 8, maybe 9 hours of sleep. Whatever it is, just do it. Don't think, oh, I can't sleep 9 hours, because that's a mistake. No, if your body consistently tells you you need to be sleeping 9 hours, then you should do that, because your body is not lying to you.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe women require more sleep than men in general?
That's an interesting question, and I've never read a study about that. And because I am an inventor scientist, I tend to be pretty geeky about that. So I don't like making claims that I can't back up. Like anytime I invent a thing, if I find that it works for me, but I can't prove it as a universal law, I don't
Hmm.
talk about it. Like I know people are into crystals and they're like, I hold this magic rock and I feel better. Maybe that's true, but I don't have studies on that. So even if I buy a crystal, I'm not going to tell somebody else to buy one, because what do I really know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always just think kind of like what you said. I mean, your N equals one is more important than any study anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, then there's people, like, I'm sure you've heard that some people have a specific gene where they only require like 3 to 4 hours a night.
A few people are like that, although I
Right.
think a lot of them are deluded. But, if they try that simple test and find out, yeah, I wake up energized and I have no sleep deficit, wow, they're lucky people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I
a
would.
lot of good things happen in sleep too. That's the other overlooked part, because,
Hmm.
that I could talk for days about the sleep studies, but, your EEGs get better when you sleep. See, normally in activity, we're in alpha, which is a fairly fast EEG wave, which is good for getting things done, but it's long-term harmful for your body. Alpha burns things up. It's like fire. It's like pitta. And even worse, they're higher frequency waves we won't get into because we don't want to have those, the flight or fight kind of responses. But when your body's healing, it goes into the slower EEG waves like delta and theta. And there's an even deeper thing. It's called sleep spindles, and they've only recently been discovered. But they're not only slow waves, but they're little modulations that ride on top of the slow wave. So when you're having sleep spindles, the EEG studies and the physiological studies show that at that precise moment, your body is doing a cellular healing process that doesn't happen even in deep sleep. And you do not get these sleep spindles unless you're going into deep sleep. So, and then another thing is memory consolidation, because we go through the day and we're having all these experiences and they go into short-term memory. But what happens during the deeper states of sleep, not the light states, not dreaming, not REM, but the deeper states, is uh, the brain basically looks through all the data of the day and then it throws out things that aren't it feels important, and consolidates the memories that it feels will help us be more effective and live longer and everything. So that's
Yeah.
memory consolidation, and that happens, you maybe heard of it, in the
Yeah.
deeper levels.
I think memory consolidation is just one of the coolest things where, like, I know, for example, like when I was a kid learning how to play guitar and you would just practice a riff over and over for that day.
Yeah.
And like you just kind of wouldn't get it. And then you'd go to sleep and wake up the next day and all of a sudden it's there.
There it
And
is.
same with like studying and all these things and then once I kind of learned that was a thing, I would be like, oh, I can't wait to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm going to wake up and like kind of, I'll have this so much better. And I just think that's so weird and fascinating how it does that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's studying, like if you cram the night before an exam, you've got to make sure you leave enough time to sleep so that those things that you learn will consolidate. Because if you stay up till 2 a.m. and then have to get up at 7 and go to your exam, you have not consolidated because you haven't gotten the deep level. So if it really came to that, you should study 2 nights before the exam, or else just go to sleep early enough, because just, I play bass, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you have any insight into like, or any crazy theories on like dreams and what that's all about? Like why we dream?
Yeah, that is a
give me something out there. I know you got something.
Okay,
I don't need studies for this.
That's out there.
Okay.
And then I'll get into something that I can prove. There's a study, and it's not, I wouldn't call it significant because it's brief, but the theory was based on the fact that much of our intracellular communication is not electrical or chemical, even though we know a lot of it is. It's that when we're in the lighter levels of sleep, like REM, what's happening is, our bodies move in REM sleep. So the theory of this is that in REM, our brain signals like your arm to move and your leg to move. And that's for 2 reasons. One, you've got to get lymphatic circulation, which is the whole point of the floating bed. But the second reason is when you move, that basically it's a testing mechanism where your brain is seeing when it's in a signal, is your arm moving properly or not properly. So that's REM sleep. Then you go down into the deeper levels of sleep. And during those deeper levels, there is almost no nerve activity, like your reflexes don't work. If somebody hit your knee, your leg would not move. And that's because the electrical activity comes almost completely to a halt. And the theory, based on preliminary research, is that during that period of deep sleep, the reason the nerve impulse is shut down is because your cells are actually sending radio frequency waves, which would be inundated and overshadowed if you had activity, electrical or even chemical potentially, but especially electrical. And that's the reason our cranium is shaped the way it is, because those signals come from the entire body and they radiate all around because it can't be directional, but they hit the cranium, which acts like a waveguide, and it captures those waves and they bounce back off, and the brain then sorts them out through a filtering mechanism. There's a lot of filtering that the brain does. I can talk a lot about that because I had an audio company and I learned to make speakers based on how the brain processes audio. It's not like a microphone at all. And so this theory is that we get that feedback from the direct electromagnetic signals the cells are sending out, and then we go back to REM. Because now the brain wants to see, okay, what just happened? Did that signal that I sent to heal my arm make it work better or not? So over the period of the night, we go through several cycles up and down with feedback, no feedback, feedback, no feedback. So you ask for sort of an out there thing, and that's definitely one of them that's yet to be definitively proven, but the preliminary results look pretty good.
Very cool.
The other reason that we want to have better sleep, in terms of this motion that I'm talking about, see, the body has a plumbing system that is just like your house. And this is how I invented the floating bed. I realized, okay, I need to sleep better and I want to have better EEG readings, and that will be good. So I started experimenting, but then I looked at the waterbed and I thought, well, I have to be honest because I'm a scientist. I have to be cynical about things. I can't just automatically make an assumption. And I looked at the waterbed and it never caught on. And I thought, well, there's something wrong about this idea that we need more motion during sleep.
Mm-hmm.
See, our ancestors, they chopped wood and carried water, and their workload was tremendous. I mean, 100 years ago, nobody sat around at a desk. Everybody was out there, and I mean, literally carrying water, because you were not likely to have water 20 feet from your house or certainly in your house. And even 100 years ago, people worked very hard, but I realized that we're deficient in motion because we're not getting the kind of motion we need to drive the lymphatic circulation. See, the way the lymphatic circulation works, and this is something most people don't know. Maybe people have heard of the lymphatic system, but they don't really understand the mechanism, which is the critical issue. So imagine your body as an analog of your kitchen sink. So in your kitchen, you've got a faucet, and when you turn on the spigot, water is going to fill up the kitchen sink, and there's no stopping it because the water's under pressure. That's completely analogous to our arterial system, wherein the heart function is the pump. And until we die, there are going to be nutrients and oxygen pumped into every cell of the body. But our body, even though we think of it as this rigid thing, it is not. If you grab your arm, you can grab that skin and you can pull and you realize, wow, I'm a bag of like 70% water. So these cells are literally floating around in this bag of water. They're not, other than the bones, they're not firmly attached to anything. And so that's basically like the water in your kitchen sink. Now, in the sink, the drain system, obviously, is not connected to the feed. So the drain system, having no pump at all, if it gets ever so slightly stopped up, then let's say you were washing dishes at night and you put them in the sink with soap, but you didn't drain the sink. The water's welling up, and then you go to bed. Well, if the sink didn't drain, bacteria would be growing in that water, and you would come back in the morning, and that water would be toxic, basically, because you did not keep the flow going. Well, it turns out, and in the body, our lymphatic system is just like the drain in the kitchen, with one difference. Instead of having gravity drive our lymphatic system, the driver of that system is motion. So if you look at the lymphatic channels, they're like little thin vessels that look like blood vessels, but without a pump. The way they work is they have a little valve every 1/10 of an inch apart. So your cells, when they process anything, they're spitting the toxins out through osmosis into this bag of water, and it finds its way into these lymphatic channels. So when you are still, the toxins just stay still. But when you move, the valve opens if you move this way, and then if you move the other way, the valve closes. And this is a shuttling process that requires that you move 1/10 of an inch. If you don't move at all, nothing happens. If you move more than 1/10 of an inch, you get lymphatic flow. And once I understood this, I thought, well, since I'm deficient in motion, everybody is, I need to get a freebie. I need to get motion at night, because then I'm not having to spend time. I have to spend money to get the bed, but I don't have to spend any time, which is very rare because, as we know, everything costs time or money or both. But I thought, if I can make a bed that doesn't cost time, then for 8 hours, I will get this amazing benefit that otherwise would be lost. So I started.
And I just want to interject here. So just so people like have an idea, you are the inventor of something, I think you call it the floating bed.
Right, the floating bed.
And I guess like the way that kind of works is that it's like, think of it like a bed that's connected to to rope, and then those ropes are attached to your ceiling. So you're sleeping in a bed that's essentially attached to your ceiling, and then it slowly it floats and I guess slowly moves throughout the night.
It has a very gentle rocking frequency. And
Right.
we also have stands, and there are other ways to hang them, but it has to hang from something. Our stands are great, but the ceiling for most people indoors is what they do. I mean, we've got, thousands of people around the world are using these beds. So we've been doing this 20 years. So
You recommend sleeping in that every single night?
every night, I've been doing it for over 20 years, every night, unless I'm traveling.
It's interesting because, see, I've always thought that, which I don't do, so I'm a big hypocrite here, but I would have thought that the best way to sleep would just be like totally grounded, like sleeping on the floor, grounded to the earth. Whereas your bed is the opposite.
Well, I have a grounding rod. So I'm in my bed, but I am grounded. I drove, actually, because again, I'm a geek. Instead of depending on the regular electrical system at my house, which can have induced current even in the ground wires, I drove a separate ground rod into my ground with nothing else connected except two wires. One wire is connected to my feet right now under my desk, and the other wire goes upstairs and is connected to my bed through a silver sheet. So even though I'm sleeping above the ground in the air and rocking, I'm completely grounded. So it's the best of both worlds. But
Yeah, I was just about to say.
between the two, because I've, experimented all these decades, I will tell you that the rocking motion is far more noticeable and more profound than the grounding. But hey, you can have both, so why not?
Yeah, exactly. And so I've always thought that I sleep so well in cars, obviously not when I'm driving, but I sleep well as a passenger. I sleep pretty great on airplanes. Is that like the same thought process, which is that like maybe humans just feel comforted when they're have a little bit of motion?
Well, see, your body has two-word language, pain and pleasure. Now, some of the pain signals can be beneficial, but many of them are not. And so in response to any stimulus, anything we do, anything that happens, your body, not having a verbal acuity, sends pain or pleasure. When we're rocking, the body immediately knows that we're getting increased lymphatic circulation. So the body sends pleasure, which is really cool. And in fact, you mentioned dreams earlier. It turns out not only there are all these studies about the benefits of motion for EEG, lymphatic flow, blah, blah, blah. People subjectively have happier dreams when they sleep in motion because that bliss that rocking creates permeates your dream state, and that makes your dreams skew toward happier. Again, I'm not going to say anything is 100% good and this other thing's 100% bad. You're not going to die if you sleep in a static bed, but you're going to die earlier. I mean, in fact, the studies also show that the more hours you sit at a desk, the earlier you were going to die. Like, it's literally a straight line. Like, people who sit 8 hours versus 6 hours versus 4, the 8-hour people die younger. And again, I thought, because I have to sit at a desk, I'm going to get this motion at night because it's a freebie. Once I get this bed, I can have the rocking all night, and I won't have to be devoting nearly as much time in the daytime to cleaning out the system, to taking the garbage out. It's like a literal panacea.
Right. It makes sense. And I definitely want to try it. And I think I maybe read somewhere on your website, or maybe not, but basically the concept of the floating bed it's almost like similar to how like a mother would rock her baby child. So we've been kind of conditioned since birth to just love that rocking motion, and that's from our moms rocking us as babies, right? So it's sort of mimicking that.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
That is very accurate. We can't cite a study because there's no way to do a study that shows that we associate the rocking with that. That would be impossible to prove, but it is a memory way back in there. And here's another thing that's kind of critical. when I started the idea of making the emotional bed, my first thought was that, well, if it's so good, why didn't the bed catch on? Because it has motion, it increases lymphatic flow, it should be healthy. And so I put the idea out of my mind because I thought I'm missing something here. But then I had my one eureka moment, and this was the genesis of the entire business. I have a prop. I remember being a kid and some older person shows you the bucket trick when you take a bucket of water. And if you take any liquid containing vessel and you move it laterally, which is how all motional beds made before the floating bed were designed. They had 4 ropes, so they move like this. And you can see the fluid in here actually amplifies the motion. I can move it just a little bit and the fluid sloshes even more. So the problem is, in your vestibular canals, you have these 3 canals in your inner ear. People have heard about them. And when you move, the liquid in those 3 canals moves in the same way to tell you which way you're moving. And when that fluid sloshes even a tiny, tiny bit, it tells your sympathetic nervous system that you're on something moving sideways that's trying to move out from under you and you could fall off. So even if you're only moving a tiny amount, your brain thinks this is dangerous. That spikes your EEGs. It sends them up into, alpha and even higher. And that's not conducive to better sleep or relaxation. So
Wow.
So
you're saying that water beds are actually dangerous?
They're both good and bad. They're good because they increase lymphatic flow. They're bad because they tell your brain that you're in danger and they do not promote deeper sleep. In fact, they make you hang around in the lighter levels of sleep. And although, we know people ditched them because of leakage and things like that, a primary reason is because they tell you not to relax. And that is the last message your brain needs to hear when you're sleeping. So my eureka was remembered being a kid and somebody showing me the bucket trick. And I can't demonstrate it on camera very well, but everyone's seen it when you're a kid. You swing a bucket of water over your head like that and the water stays level the whole time. It will not slosh around. And suddenly I went, oh my God, there is only one way to design any bed that moves. You want to get the motion, but the only way to do it is if it's a pure pendulum, because only in that case will it tell your vestibular system, your sympathetic nervous system, that you're safe and send you into the deeper states. And in fact, a floating bed, and this is amazing, but it's absolutely true. If you could design our bed with a hanging point that allowed it to do a full 360 overhead, you would not only not ever fall out, if you had a bedmate who was next to you, you would not bump into them. See, with a lateral moving bed, if 2 objects, human people, for example, are different weights, then inertia tells them, it acts on them in a different way. So the heavier person is not going to bump, but the lighter person is going to be constantly, the wife basically is going to be bumping into the husband. But in a pendulum bed, they both stay affixed to the mattress. And it's not like you're pinned there, but your body just stays in the same place on the mattress. And in fact, and this is true, I didn't get into it, but I can talk a lot about the experience of people who own floating beds. Almost everybody who owns one says that and this is opposite of what people would think. They think, oh, that bed, I'm going to get up and it's going to make my partner wake up when I go to the bathroom or whatever. But what actually happens is the rocking when you get out of the bed at night or in the morning actually sends your bedmate who's sleeping into a deeper state. Rocking the bed, getting out actually is beneficial. And so what our customers tell me is that we purposely, when we go to the bathroom, give the bed a nice push to get that 1 foot of rocking. And then when we get back in, we do it again because contra to what you would think, it sends you deeper. So, we've got many ways to prove that the bed produces better sleep, mainly EEG studies that show it, but experientially too. And if you look at my website, there's a lot of testimonials from people that talk about, I got this bed, I feel better. A lot of
Yeah.
celebrities too. A lot of visionaries are using our beds now. A lot of them don't want me to reveal their name, but I'll drop a few anyway. James Cameron has one in his writing room where he wrote Avatar. Uma
Wow.
Thurman bought one and liked it so much she bought a second one. Uh, Woody Harrelson has one. Steven Tyler has one. Uh,
These are all your customers?
they're all our clients, yeah.
That's
Khloe
amazing.
Kardashian bought one. Kate Winslet bought one and gave it to a friend of hers. Natalie V, who's on the U.S. fencing team. There's an interview where she interviews me on our website where she talks about how she had a meniscus tear from fencing and she thought her career was over and she got a floating bed and after a few weeks, her meniscus sealed up. It had been torn for a year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wanted to say one thing that I do, because so I obviously sleep with my girlfriend most nights, and I definitely, get up to wake her up a lot to go to the bathroom. One trick that I've actually been doing to fall back asleep is like I close my eyes when I get back to bed, and I kind of like move my eyes back and
Oh,
forth.
interesting.
Maybe in circles. And I find that just puts me right back to sleep. And I'm almost wondering if there's a connection there between the rocking. Like maybe I'm almost like tricking my body into like some sort of a rocking by just moving
Wow.
my eyes back and forth. So I do wonder if there's something there.
That's
Yeah, and
interesting for me because I had never tried that, but I'm glad you told me.
give it a try. And yeah, it's interesting you brought up all the celebrities because I was gonna say when you were talking about it does seem like this thing has so much like viral potential. It's weird that nobody's talking about it. So it's good to see that there are people using it, and maybe we're on the precipice of something big
Oh, we
in the.
definitely are. It's just taking its time because people tend to be oriented around form and not function. And when you introduce something new, like the floating bed, it gets people's attention. I mean, to get the ball starting, because it cost me like $350K to invent this, and I had no marketing money left. 5 long years, it wasn't as simple as you would think. But once I got it done with no money, I just started doing live events. So in the course of 10 years around LA and Vegas and Miami, I brought the bed to 300 events, like a party, 4th of July in the park, not any kind of sales events, but just gatherings. And I put 40,000 people in the floating bed. I talked to them for a minute, put them in the bed, gauged their response. So I know from 40,000 people how people react to the floating bed. And almost every single one of those people, regardless of whether they thought this is going to be good, or maybe they thought it's like a waterbed and they thought it was going to be bad, but they got in anyway. Almost every one of those people, after 1 minute, sat up and said, wow, this is more relaxing than I thought it would be. Because it triggers that response, maybe akin to, like you say, mother's rocking, maybe because of the lymphatic flow. But the signals come through and it's not subtle. I mean, you lie down in it. There are beds around the country, not enough yet to be at a hotel in every city. I mean, we're, trying to work toward that. But if you look at our website, floatingbed.com, you can see a few places where you can go try a floating bed. And I encourage people just to buy it because I know you're going to like it and we have a guarantee. But if you are cynical, and I can appreciate why you should be, just find one of these beds. You'll have to drive a long way. You can come to our factory in Iowa and lie down in it. We have a Airbnb type room where you can spend the night, and people do drive from around the country or fly and sleep in a floating bed. And we get a lot of sales that way because this is not just a hype. It's something that actually works. The amazing thing to me is that, I thought of this because I don't know why nobody figured this out before, but I think because I meditate and I do it every day, meditation is a way to get quiet. And then when you do that, the universe kind of speaks, not verbally, but it speaks. And so by getting silent, I get quiet enough so that I get these signals, and the bed and other inventions, I didn't go into all of them, but I've had quite a few things along the way. They kind of come to me, and then I do the hard work. You have to do that part. But that's kind of where the idea came from.
It's amazing. We're almost out of time. Do you have a hot take for us?
Well, go to the website. It's floatingbed.com. Think about everything I said. Look around the website because there's some illustrations. And then, if you still have questions, call me or email me because I've got a lot of things that are not on the website. If I put everything on there, it'd take you hours to go through it. But if you call or email me and say, what about this? Or I have motion sickness. Well, I like the bed. There's a study, that actually pendulum motion is a cure for most forms of motion sickness. So we've got information for everybody. And there are very, very few people, maybe 5% of the people with a certain kind of motion sickness, which is from a blow to the head or a viral inflammation, will not like the floating bed. But the other 95% of the people, not only will they like the floating bed, it will actually cure you of your motion sickness. And like you say, it's like the motion in a car, which puts you deeper, but it's even better because it doesn't create that anxiety response. So yeah, check the website out.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you. It was really fun. And I'm glad you told me that thing about the eye motion. I'm going to do that.
Give it a try.
All right.
This is the Cold Plunge Podcast with me, Mike Gorman. Be sure to check out the video version of this podcast on our YouTube channel and check the show notes for any references, studies, or links to anything I spoke about on our website at plungereviews.com/podcasts.